Good morning, everyone. We will be starting in just a couple of minutes. Morning, everyone. We will start in 1 minute. If you want, take this time, go into the question and answer, the Q&A, and let me know where you are coming from today. Awesome. I see people from all over the country this morning or this afternoon. Great to see. I have a soft spot for those in Calgary or from Saskatchewan. Okay. Let's get started. Hope everyone is doing well today. Today, our webinar is about filing T1 and T2 tax returns in ProTax. I'm your presenter, Jason Hasty. I have my master's degree in accounting. I'm also a CPA CA. I went to the University of Saskatchewan, hence my soft spot for those from Saskatchewan. Today's webinar is going to be 1 hour long. It's going to run from 1:30 to 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. There is a ProTax training guide that we had included with some of the previous webinars that I've done on ProTax T1 and T2. I'm not sure if that has been sent out to you. If you would like it, it's an excellent resource on learning ProTax. So if you need it, please feel free to ask for it. I'm not sure Intuit team who's joining me today, if they could provide the link to you, possibly in the chat window or in the Q&A window. We will be following up today's session with a Q&A answer session at the end, but please feel free to ask questions as we go along. If I do not see the questions myself, we do have the Intuit team assisting us and answering questions as we go. Okay, today's course is eligible for 1 CPD credit. They will be emailed to you within 1 week of today's class. If for some reason you do not get it within a week, please reach out to Intuit and ask for that. And just a disclaimer, all information in this webinar is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not legal or tax advice on any opinions or matters. The webinar, its contents, and presenter are not to be relied upon for tax treatment of items reflected on tax returns. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We only have 1 hour, so I'm going to try and leave a time at the end, maybe 10 minutes at the end for a full question and answer session. So really, we only have about 45 minutes of content today. So we're going to be going fairly fast. I'm going to try and talk as fast as I can. We are going to start off with why cloud. Why do you want to be in the cloud or use programs or apps in the cloud? Then more specifically, why ProTax? Then we're going to be talking about ProTax T1. It is personal tax filing season after all. And then we will be doing some on ProTax T2. And finally, answering some of your questions that you may have at the end of the webinar. Okay, so just quickly, why cloud? Cloud brings many advantages to it. Safe and secure data management. You're not storing things locally. USB sticks that could get stolen, or if you have a fire, things like that. Everything is automatically stored and backed up for you, so you don't have to worry about that as well. Same thing with corrupted USB drives, things like that. You can access the cloud 24/7 from anywhere in the world on any device. And that is as long as you have an internet connection, of course. So as long as you have that internet connection, makes it very easy to access. And we're going to talk about a few things like attaching documents in ProTax so that then you can access those documents from anywhere in the world. Makes it really, really easy. Something that I really want to highlight is the easy collaboration. With ProTax, the way that the subscription works is it works for everybody in your firm. So you can share the ProTax file with anybody in your firm. They can work on it. No longer are you having to worry about having a data file or something stored on the server and somebody doesn't know where to find it. That's something that we at Tenjago, my company, would go through a lot previously. But with the cloud, it's all based on the web browser. So as long as you have the web browser, very easy to access it. Now, specifically, some ProTax advantages: never needing to install, update, managing the apps. So, the IT person in your firm having to do all of that. I used to be that person at the firm that I articled with. So no longer having to do that. And then, of course, having your client data accessible to anybody who you choose in your firm to have access or to share it with. Really importantly, ProTax uses the same Intuit tax engine that literally has powered millions of tax returns. So millions of tax returns have been prepared using the same engine that we use in ProTax. It's very easy to toggle between your client file and your tax return. Specifically, if the client is in QuickBooks Online, you're using your QBOA or your QuickBooks Online accountant login to toggle very easily between your client's data file and your tax return. And we're going to be going through the work papers and all that today as well. And then one of the other really important things, it works both on PC and Mac. So no longer, do you have a tax program that's only available on PC or Mac. As long as you have the web browser, you can access it on both. Okay, so what years does ProTax cover? ProTax T1, the personal tax side of things, covers 2018 to 2022. And ProTax T2, it goes back all the way to 2015. And then, of course, now we have corporate year ends that end in 2023. How much does ProTax cost? How do you get it? All of that kind of stuff. So ProTax modules are sold separately. You can subscribe to the ProTax T1, T2, T3. You just subscribe separately for each of those. And they are based on an annual subscription. So when you subscribe to one of these modules, you get unlimited tax return preparation and filing within that module. So for example, T1s, unlimited T1 returns and e-filing. You also get access to a lot of things that we'll talk about today, like the autofill my return, the awesome T1 express data entry, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, there is a promotion that has been extended to March 31st. For new customers, if you sign up for ProTax, you will get a $100 dining gift card. And I believe that is per module. So that $100 dining gift card will be emailed to you, and it's valid for restaurants across Canada. All right, so one thing, I'll talk a little bit more about support and help at the end of today's webinar, but really interesting and really effective for you. If you are jumping onto ProTax, you can get a 30-minute free onboarding call with Intuit. Very easy to book your call. Just click on the bubble to book it. Even if you were on the free trial and you haven't totally decided, you can talk to an expert. They can get you help with things here like they talk about setup, migrating files, and a lot more. And we will be talking about migrating your files, carrying them forward, and importing them into ProTax as well. Okay, so I'm going to kind of start off with the ProTax environment. And this is valid for both your ProTax T1 and T2, as well as T3 now as well. So these are your main tax settings that you will see. When you first jump into ProTax, you want to take a look at these settings and make sure that you have them filled out. The first, obviously, is e-filing. E-filing is the standard way, and I say the best way to transmit tax returns, both T1s and T2s, as well as T3s, to the CRA. No longer do you have to print out the sets, mail them, depending on what years you're looking at, because I believe the CRA does not accept T2 returns by e-file prior to 2017. So there are some limitations. For those, I would ask you to just reach out to the CRA site. But very important to become an e-filer so that you can e-file those tax returns. When you apply, just Google, make sure you are on the CRA's website and apply for the e-file number. It does take up to 30 days. So, just note that if you're going to be filing returns, that you need to spend some time waiting for the CRA to get back to you on that. So that's the first tab that we'll see. Second is your preparer info. We will talk about autofill my return today. Things like getting access to your client's data and files online with the CRA. That's if you have a rep ID or your business number or group ID, things like that. Then you can access your client's data online, and you can use the autofill my return, which we'll be talking about today. Print tab, obviously, printing in our world is still really important. Some of those forms that you may want to print to PDF, so you don't necessarily have to have a physical printer to print them to, but this print tab allows you to create any different print sets that you want. And it's very easy to drag and drop each form up and down the list as you're creating the print sets. And then that allows you to print for things like your office, if you do want to print that way, or have PDFs printed that way, as well as print sets for your clients. Letters tab. One of the awesome functions of ProTax is being able to create letters and send those letters to your clients. Very easy to navigate and to use the letters feature in ProTax. It works almost like a word processor where you have different fields that you can drag in and info that you can type into the letter. The fields are great because it allows you to pull the data that you already have that exists in your client's QBO file or in your QBOA file. So really easy to drag and drop those fields and customize letters for each of your clients. And as part of those letters, I always recommend, highly recommend doing an engagement letter for your clients. You always want to get an engagement letter with each of your clients, which outlines your engagement. So, what you are going to be doing for them, what you will be filing for them. What it does is it helps lay out the expectations and what's going to be done. And it keeps you from having misunderstandings later on with a client. So really important to get those engagement letters. And that's just one of the many letters that comes with ProTax as a template that you can also very easily edit and customize to your own needs. On this screen, you'll see a few things here. You can print the forms or letters. You can print the returns. This is also where you can get consent from your clients, the authorize or cancel a representative. And I just want to point out that a lot of the authorizer representative, what's the word I'm looking for? The rules around that have changed with the CRA. So I would advise you to go on the CRA's website to take a look at that. One thing that we always encourage our clients to do is to sign up for a My account and a My Business account. If they're a business client, if they have a business, whether it's sole proprietor or corporation, to sign up for both of those. That allows them to very easily authorize you as a representative as well. And then they can also log into those accounts at any point to see any info that they need that relates to them or their business with the CRA. Something that is universal to ProTax, T1, T2, T3 are the colors and indicators. And I always say, take a screenshot of this screen because it will help you navigate ProTax a little bit easier. There are different cell colors, as you can see by a couple of those fields or those cells that I'm showing here, the ones with the blue. You will see that kind of bar or that little area of color on the right-hand side of the field. If that is purple, that is a cell or a field that has been carried forward from a previous return. So if you're carrying forward returns from previous years, you will see that those cells in purple. And if it is something that is blue, it is something that is calculated by the ProTax engine. So any of the cells that rely on ProTax's engine to make calculations for taxes will show in blue. Now, if that cell is red, that means that that field has been overridden. So that's if a number has been typed, for example, into that field that is, say, a calculated field, that would show as an overridden cell. Now, because we are operating in a browser environment, we don't necessarily have the ability to right-click and unoverride or remove an override of a cell. So the way that we do that in ProTax is you clear the contents of the cell. So you highlight or you put your cursor in and remove all of the data in that cell. And then you either click out or tab out of that cell. That will remove the override. So something really important to note in ProTax. A couple other great features with ProTax. The live auditor. So I'll be talking a little bit about the auditor as well. And I mentioned, the ProTax tax engine previously. It comes with an auditor that looks at all of the information that you are entering to see if any of it looks like it could be wrong. And different things that it labels as, is it something that, will stop you from being able to e-file, or is it a suggested thing? So there is the auditor, but what the live auditor does, and you can toggle it on or off, is it allows you to see information as you are entering it. So in this example, we see that there's the taxpayer's personal information, his or her social insurance number. It looks like it's an invalid social insurance number. So what ProTax does is it looks at the algorithms that are created for social insurance numbers. If it sees something that does not look valid compared to Service Canada's algorithm for social insurance numbers, then it will flag it directly there with a little note that says taxpayer's social insurance number is invalid. So second part of this is that it's missing the taxpayer's title. So, Mr., Mrs., Miss, whatever, that is missing. So that's part of the live auditor, which you can toggle on or off. Another little feature or function of ProTax is Quick Mode. What Quick Mode does is it basically saves you bandwidth and enables quicker processing of your tax return. So I haven't specifically seen any reason not to use Quick Mode. So I generally say, let's toggle it on, and then it reduces any kind of bandwidth because obviously you're on Wi-Fi, as well as it increases your processing. Something that is fairly new to ProTax as well and works super slick, I love this function, is being able to invoice your clients directly from ProTax. So once you've filed their tax return, once you've e-filed their tax return, you can click on this Invoice Client button. It will take you directly into the QBOA section so that you can create that invoice and then send it out directly through QuickBooks Online Accountant. Nice thing in sending it directly through QBOA as well is that you can see a full history. You can see when that invoice has been sent. You can see if the client has opened that invoice, et cetera, et cetera. So it keeps historical log of anything that's happened with that invoice. It is a little bit tricky to find, so just note that you have to be in the e-file screen to be able to see that button for the invoice client. So just note that. Okay, so that's kind of the overall gist of ProTax and what you'd see universally between the different modules in ProTax. Let's jump directly into ProTax T1. So what are we going to be looking at here? So importing and carrying forward tax returns. We will be talking about the T1 autofill. Love, love, love this feature. If you want to talk about one of the biggest time-saving features, it would be the T1 autofill. Another amazing time-saving feature that is exclusive to ProTax is the T1 Express entry. What that does is that allows you to very quickly fill out a client's tax return. We'll be talking about e-filing, of course. I've mentioned that already. Linked returns, so spouses, also dependents, being able to do that in ProTax T1. Pension splitting and using the calculator for that. Some additional features, attaching source documents, express notice of assessment, which gets you a notice of assessment on your client's filed tax returns instantly. So these are some of the features that we will be talking about with ProTax T1, as well as self-employed clients. So if you have self-employed clients, I've got some really good news for you in ProTax that makes filing those T2125 forms within the client's T1 as well, much easier. Okay, so let's get started with importing T1 files. Here we're in the T1 personal module. If you can see at the top there, that's where you select when you are in ProTax. When you are in QuickBooks Online Accountant, you will see on the left-hand side, it will have ProTax. And right from there is where you can select T1, T2, or T3. Here we are in the T1 module, and you click on the Import Returns button. This allows you to import returns from Profile, which is Intuit's desktop-based tax software. It allows you to carry forward returns from TaxCycle. So notice the difference there. If you are importing a return from Profile, it imports that specific return, and then you can carry that forward to a future year. With TaxCycle, you are carrying forward a return that is in TaxCycle. And also other returns as well. So later on, I will show you how to access information on the other returns. Okay. If you are looking at importing and carrying forward in bulk, you can also do this through the bulk actions button. That's where you can carry forward your returns. So very easy year to year to carry forward a number of returns for clients using the bulk. And then you just select which returns you actually want to carry forward. Very standard in Windows or PC or Mac environment. Where you can toggle, you can check off just the returns that you want to carry forward. And just note that importing is not the same as carrying forward. So, okay, so starting a new T1 file. If you want to start a brand new tax return, a T1 from scratch, when you are in ProTax, you just click Create New Return. And this is where you do the T1 personal, or you can do the T1 self-employed. So kind of what I talked about there, that you can create tax returns that are for self-employed individuals, and we will go into that a little bit later as well. So you have the ability for just a standard T1 or a client who is self-employed. Okay, so this screen basically kind of takes you through a navigation of the main landing screen when you are in the T1 environment. It is very similar to the T2 environment as well. As you can see at the top, bubble number 1 is which module you are in. You can do things like searching by client name. You can filter the tax returns by the tax year, by the status. So are these returns in progress? Have they been completed? Things like that. As we talked about, you can create a new tax return, a new T1. This is where you also work on existing returns that you have started on. Something to note, if you want to delete a tax return, you have to be in that tax return to delete it. So there will not be an option here to just delete a tax return. You actually have to go into the return and then delete the return from directly in the tax return. And I think they developed that just so that tax returns are not accidentally deleted. Other functions that you can do, you can duplicate a return, you can rename it, or you can start a T3 from a T1 return as well. Okay, so this screen is when you are already in a tax return. Couple of things that are really important to note. The search bar, the go-to that you see there on bubble number 1, that allows you to jump to any part of a tax return. Intuit ProTax calls this the quick bar. It is full of functionality. If you want to add a new form to your tax return, you can search it by that. You don't have to know the form name or the form number. You know, if you just know the name or if you know the number. The quick bar also allows you to search certain terms. So if you need help on some items. So it's a very powerful area where you can search, you can jump to, or you can add any forms that you want to. Notice also number 5 there, the little bubble at the bottom left. That's where you can also add a form or letter. One thing to note with the quick bar, if you are searching for a form and you type it in, if it's already part of the T1, it will show as being included already. If it's a form that has not yet been added, because we obviously don't need all of the forms for every T1. If it hasn't been added, then you'll have the ability right there to add that form to your tax return. Number 2, I want to talk about and mention how much I like this feature. This is part of the cloud environment that I love as well. You can attach documents to your tax return, your client's tax returns, and these documents aren't ones that are transmitted to the CRA. So you can attach documents. There's both the sides, but you can attach documents that aren't transmitted to the CRA. Documents that you want to keep on hand that if you need to ever access, again, you can access from anywhere in the world at any time, from any device, as long as you have the browser and an internet connection. So some things that we've attached for clients, say incorporation documents, things like that. And just know that those are secure. They are held within Intuit's servers. So, not easily accessible. Again, use your own measures and protocols for accessing using your username and password, things like that. But as far as the environment itself, very secure. Live Auditor, we talked about already, and Quick Mode, we talked about already as well. Okay, so T1 Express Data Entry. Basically, a tax return that is for a very typical client. If you want to prepare that tax return very, very quickly, you can use the T1 Express function, which is at the top of your summary on the left-hand side of your forms that are included in the tax return. That basically allows you to very quickly fill in the client info, e-filing info. It includes things like T4s. So you can very, very quickly fill in a T4, medical expenses, donations, things like that. So it's for some of the most popular forms on a T1 on a personal tax return, RSPs, things like that. So using the T1 Express data entry makes it very simple and easy to fill out a tax return. Adding a form, I already kind of talked about. You can use the quick bar. This just gives you a better screenshot of what happens as soon as you start typing in the quick bar. This shows you the different forms. So for example, here we've got investment. So we're thinking, what is that investment form? I can't remember. It's a T5, but you don't remember what it is. You just start typing investment. It will pull all of the forms and any help or assistance that you need on the investment side. So it makes it really, really easy to search forms, even if you don't know the number of the form. And this comes in really, really handy, especially in the T2, the corporate tax module as well. If you can't remember, that it's a Schedule 100 for the balance sheet, for example, very easy to search and navigate by that. I mentioned briefly the auditor. So this is the auditor that is powered by the Intuit tax engine. The auditor appears on the left-hand side, and you will see there are two selections there. There's forms, which we looked at before. The second one is then the auditor. With the auditor, you have 4 different areas that you can access. So issues, with your tax return, with your client's tax return. So these are like the major issues that you need help with that may prevent your tax return from being e-filed. There's also warnings. It's part of warnings as well as issues. You see the little grayed out check marks in the bubble. You have the ability to sign off on warnings and issues, and that will then appear in the sign-offs area, the third area of the auditor, as well as the overrides. So what I talked about previously with overriding fields and where they turn red, you will find a list of those overrides very easily accessible from that location. Okay, so when we jump back to the forms, the first part again, we had on the left-hand side all of the available forms. There are 2 options to that. So that's your data input on the left-hand part of that bubble there. And that's where you're inputting all of your client's data. If you want to preview it and see exactly what it's going to look like in a PDF format, that's where you click on PDF form. And that will show the preview of what the client's tax return is going to look like. Okay, and then wrapping up your tax return, once you've finished, you always want to do that T183, send it to your client and have them sign it. Something that is really, really awesome as a function when you are printing letters or forms in ProTax is you have the ability to add a password. So you can password protect those forms. Really, really important. And I encourage you have the ability to skip the password protection, as you can see here, but I encourage you not to do that. Anytime you are sending a PDF or sending an email, it has the ability to be intercepted at any point. You could be working on an insecure network. Somebody could have access to email. There's many different reasons that affect security of email. So especially when you're sending sensitive client data or client information, you want to make sure to password protect those forms. And you can do so right within ProTax as it creates that PDF document. Okay, and then e-filing the tax returns. Very, very easy to e-file. As I talked about before, you obviously need an e-file number. Once you e-file, you will get a confirmation within ProTax that tax return has been e-filed successfully. If it's rejected, then you will get information on the rejection and possibly why it's been rejected. Okay, and I would definitely want to talk about T1 autofill. We also have T2 autofill. That is the CRA's option to autofill a client's tax return. And what that does is that any information that the client or that the CRA has on your client, for example, if they have your client's T4 slips that have been filed by the employer or employers, T4s, T5s, T3s, RRSP contributions, things like that, that the CRA has on file or has access to for that client, can all be pulled almost instantaneously into your client's tax return. So what does that do? Basically, it saves you a lot of time having to manually enter that data. And it also saves the potential for errors to happen when you are entering that data. So, transposing numbers, forgetting a number, mixing up things. I always say still review what has been pulled in. If your client is giving you physical or electronic copies of their T-slips, make sure that you always look at those as well, because sometimes slips are amended by employers, things like that, and what the CRA has may not be the most up-to-date. So I always suggest a review based on what your client is giving you or telling you as well. Okay, so linked returns, very easy to create spousal returns within the ProTax environment. When you are creating a new tax return, you will have the option in blue, as you see there, to link a spouse. So you can link those spouses. And also something to note, if you've got those clients already in your QuickBooks Online Accountant client database, then you can pull in your client's tax return as well as the spouse's tax return. So very easy to do that. And then you can give the return a name and then continue on. Also, in relation to linked returns, dependents. So if you've got two spouses that are linked, you can link another return. So you can have the dependents linked as part of that. And the reason that you'd want to do that, something that it facilitates, things like sharing of education credits, things like that, makes it much easier to do when you've got linked returns. Pension splitting. So also being able to split pensions between clients. ProTax has a built-in pension optimizer. So there is the ability to have ProTax do the calculations almost instantaneously and give you suggestions on how you should split that pension between your taxpayers, between your clients. So very easy to do that. Something that would take you, a lot of time can be handled by the ProTax pension optimization in just a few seconds. So really, really handy to have that. And if you've used that previously in Intuit's profile and their desktop related software, it works very much in the same way. Attaching source documents. I've already kind of talked about that, but again, very important to attach any documents that you think you might want to recall or use in your client's tax return. Some may say that I go overboard. A lot of the electronic documents, if there's like certain medical expenses, certain donations, things like that, I always like to attach those, because if they are ever questioned by the CRA, you have those very easily, readily available to you. And if you're using if the CRA is doing a review, as they seem to be doing on a lot of client tax returns for specifically, childcare costs or medical expenses, you've got all of those in electronic format. You can then submit those documents electronically to the CRA as part of their request for those documents. So, just having them all available at hand and in digital format already makes it really easy. Okay, and then last thing that I want to talk about with T1s, very easy to prepare self-employment tax returns as well within the T1. So the specific schedule that we're doing there within the T1 tax return is called the T2125. And what it allows, and we will talk about this in a little bit in the T2 area, is to be able to map those QuickBooks Online client accounts onto the tax return. So no longer are you having to print out the return or print out the profit and loss from a self-employed client and then go ahead and then transpose it and enter it into your tax program again. One thing that I will mention, a couple of things, use of home expenses as well as automobile expenses. There are a couple of super unique features to those when you map those within the T2125. Such as the use of home expenses and then applying the actual office area. So that percentage, if you have them already in QuickBooks Online with your accountant, with your client's file, those can move through to the tax return, and that's when you just apply the percentage. And the auto expenses work a little bit differently, but you still have the ability to map those directly in. So the nice thing is going year over year, you don't have to remap them each year. If there are changes to your client's chart of accounts, you may have to change the accounts that have changed from the previous year. You may have to remap those, but all in all, everything else will remain the same. Okay, so that's pretty much the quick and dirty, the fast a version of ProTax T1, and some really useful tips and tricks and just options that you have to really easily file client T1s within ProTax. Okay, we've only got about 7 minutes left before some additional questions. So I'm just going to quickly go through the ProTax T2, so the corporate tax returns. A lot of the environment, as I said, looks very similar. The difference with the T2 is that you are working with a corporate client. You've got some really important forms like the Schedule 100, which is the balance sheet, Schedule 125, which is your profit and loss or your income statement. So some things like that. What we are going to be talking about in these last few minutes is the books to tax. So this is probably one of the best features in operating within a cloud-based environment and within one environment. So in the QuickBooks Online Accountant, going all the way from your QuickBooks Online client file all the way to the tax return. Now, note that you do not have to have a client that is in QuickBooks Online. If they are, though, it makes it so much easier to prepare their working papers using the work papers function, and then to flow that through to the tax return. So the options that we are here with the books, so your client's books all the way to the tax return, we've got your books review, then we have the work papers, and then your income tax return. So all three of those moving from one to the other seamlessly. I don't have time today to talk about adjusting entries, things like that, but you can make those very easily when you're doing the work papers, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Also importing and carrying forward returns into ProTax as well, e-filing, and that's it for the T2. So we'll start with your books review. The books review, as you can see, appears in your QuickBooks Online Accountant for that client's specific company. It allows you to focus on your period end. So that's either your monthly, your quarterly, or your annual. So depending on what you want to look at, it allows you to focus on those period ends for your clients. So it looks at what transactions happen, reconciliations, what the account balances are. So it basically just lists key tasks so that you can kind of tie up those loose ends and prioritize your work with your client's file. Very, very effective solution within your QuickBooks Online files. Then work papers. So work papers is what you kind of focus on when you're looking at the year end for a client. So that is what takes your client's books, allows you to review them all. So if you were looking through all of the balance sheet and all the profit and loss items, allows you to review all of those. Again, you can put in attachments, you can put in comments, you can communicate with your team on the file. So those of you that have used maybe Caseware in the past, other items like that, that's kind of what work papers handles. So it's the electronic version of the working papers for your client's file. As you can see at the top, we have the books review, the work papers, and then the income tax. Then underneath the work papers, we have 4 different options. So there we have your year-end tasks. That's where you create the task list of all the work papers that you're going to be working on, or what items that you're going to be tackling with your client when you're working on the year end. Documents, again, any documents that you're attaching, things like that. The review and adjust, that's where you can look, we've got a screenshot of that here. You can also do some analytics. So you can say, okay, well, previous year to this year, what has changed? What is the difference on both a percentage change and a dollar change? So that really helps you quickly identify some areas that might need attention, like, has meals and entertainment tripled? Well, if it's tripled, why has it tripled? Is that something that the CRA could potentially look at? You're going to need some explanations around that. So you want to, just not yourself, but also your client, that allows you to communicate with them and be able to kind of resolve some of those issues or understand those differences. Then the last one is the groupings and statements. I'm going to go back here. So here's the documents. You can, again, attach any documents. One thing that I want to point out is you can also add links. So if there are information resources, things online that you want to add a link to, here, for example, it's the CRA and some forms that they have in relation to a certain item. You can also add those links as well. Again, the review and adjust, I talked about adjusting, adding notes. Again, you can add those attachments as well. So a lot of flexibility. You can mark off the review's been done on, the bank account, the preparer, the partner review, things like that. So a lot of different functionality. And I talked a lot deeper in the ProTax module that I spoke on back in February. That was for the T2. That was back in November and December. So we likely will be having those again next year. Those are more in depth. Today, obviously, is covering more of the overall view. Last one that I want to point out under the work papers is the grouping and statements. So if you are creating financial statements for your clients, this allows you to very easily group from the chart of accounts. So for example, if you've got 5 different bank accounts, you've got like Royal Bank checking, Scotia savings, things like that, you can group them all into one financial statement line item called, say, cash and cash equivalents, things like that. That's where the groupings and statements part really is facilitated through, and that's again through the work papers. Okay, and then of course the income tax return. So you can map those groupings or those accounts to the income tax return, and that's where you can bring it directly into ProTax. You can export the Giphy. You can do a bunch of different items. So a lot of flexibility around the tax side when you are moving from work papers to tax. You don't have to have a client that is using QBO or has a QBO file to work with ProTax T2. You can start a T2 from work papers, or you can create a blank T2 as well. So very easy to create a blank tax return. from within ProTax T2. Something really important to note, though, if you have Giphy that you've exported from any other tax program or any other software, you can import those Giphy codes and it'll populate your Schedule 100 and 125 directly in ProTax. So that's Giphy. That's a general index of financial information. That's the CRA's system of coding for the balance sheet and the profit and loss or the income statement items. So ProTax gives you the ability to directly import those Giphy codes as well. Okay, and finally, the T2 autofill. So similar, but yet different than the T1 autofill. Because with corporations, we're working on different year ends. It's not always a calendar year end. There are a lot of different items that come into play when you are doing autofill for T2 returns. But the important thing to note here is that you have the ability to autofill those T2 returns from the information that the CRA has on that client. So can save you a lot of time instead of manually entering all of that information. And finally, just some ProTax resources. There are a lot of different ways that you can get help within ProTax. There's the help icon at the top. There's the ProTax help bubble at the bottom. When you click on those or the tax settings, which is from the main screen, I'll see if we have a screenshot of that. You can access a lot of additional resources. There's the videos that you can get from the Intuit YouTube site or from the resources site, like little things like how do I create a coupled return in ProTax? How do I use work papers with ProTax? Little quick videos. The longest one here is under 12 minutes. Take a screenshot of this QR code and that'll take you directly to the link for these videos. Additional forms or resources. You've got the forms, you've got ProTax FAQs, and events and webinars. So if you want to see what's coming up for any kind of events or webinars, you can access that as well. And just remember to access a lot of the resources from the main ProTax area before you're in a tax return. There is the tax settings and what's new section. So that will give you a lot of additional resources, including information from the CRA. Like here, we're showing a CRA tax one or T1 tax guide, FAQs, things like that. So a lot of different ways that you can access information and help using ProTax. Okay, so happy tax season. Any questions that haven't been answered? Let me just look at some of the ones that are common and have been asked from clients. And again, please send us your feedback on things like this, webinars like this. That helps us learn and to be able to develop webinars that are even more informative for you. Okay, a lot of questions on converting from other programs. Yes, there are a lot of options. Again, schedule that 30-minute session. It's free, and the Intuit techs can help guide you through what you can convert. They can get you set up, all of that. Okay, yes, yeah, you have the ability to purchase the modules separately. So if you're only needing the T1s, that's all you need to purchase. And the $500 allows you to file unlimited tax returns for a whole year based on that year's subscription. Looking through any... Lisa's asked, looks like Eric from Intuit's answering her about converting a PDF T2 to a file format that can be imported. Not sure directly on that one, but again, if you can get the Giphy into some code, it's just basically a text file, like a comma related file that will import the Giphy into ProTax. Are the identification numbers for Rep ID electronic filing number supposed to be auto-filled? No, you need to fill those in the tax settings area. So that's that area that I talked at the start. When you're in as soon as you click on ProTax on the right-hand side, you will see the tax settings area, and that's where you can fill those in for directly there. You can also export ProTax returns, so returns that you've created in ProTax. If for some reason, such as maybe Quebec forms, things like that, that ProTax doesn't have the ability to handle fully yet, you can always export those to Profile. Can a client file a T2125 on their own? No. So ProTax subscription is needed for that. I'm just looking, we've got 3 minutes left. So any like lingering questions you have? You buy ProTax directly through your QuickBooks Online accountant. So you can just click within ProTax and you should see a bubble that talks about subscribing or purchasing ProTax. Are you charged for clients through QBOA if they aren't in QuickBooks Online? No. So those clients do not face any kind of monthly fees or anything like that. If I have 1 million clients, but they're not in QBOA, will QBOA charge me for each client? You can file 1 million tax returns. That subscription in ProTax gives you an annual subscription, which you and your team, so anybody from your firm, can share those files. One thing that I will mention, if you haven't shared as part of your team members, if you haven't shared that file with your team, you have to make sure to share that so that they can see it on their ProTax window. So really important, because otherwise it will just not appear there. Okay. Thanks, Kate. Excellent training and pump for this year. Awesome. Yeah, great to see. Let's see. Is there a template available to do a Giphy import into ProTax? You know what? Reach out to Intuit on that. And I talked about that manual that you can get from them that talks all about ProTax. Included in that are some sample files that we've had that I did on the ProTax T1 and T2 webinars that I led in November, December, January, and February. Those have sample Giphy files, but every Giphy file will be different, but that will give you an idea of what they look like in the text format. So hope that helps. Basically, it's just a .txt file. If you're a PC user, I'm not sure what it would be called in the Mac environment, but it's basically just a file that has, you know, your codes, comma, and your amounts. So your Giphy code, the comma, and the amount is basically what the file is made of. So yes, Kate, next year, would we still have access to file 2022 tax returns? You can file whatever years. So for example, the T1 module, I think was 2018 to 2022. Within that subscription, you can file any years of those tax returns based on your annual subscription. So you can file unlimited returns for any of those years based on your subscription. All right. Well, I think that is it. Again, happy tax season, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Please give us your feedback. Really, Intuit is very, committed to helping you out with ProTax. So again, book that free 30-minute session if you need. Go on, find the resources, the videos, everything. And welcome to ProTax and welcome to the cloud. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.